probably started getting some like the mild symptoms on, Christmas Eve into, Christmas Day, and, a couple of days of some mild symptoms, but with the vaccine and the booster, minus some headaches and some body aches, it hasn't been that bad physically, obviously pausing again and, that feeling of being isolated and away from, your team and the season, and your purpose starts to weigh on you.
Neil?
Dan, when it comes to rescheduling, how tough is that, knowing that it's a little bit out of your hands? I mean, scheduling always is to some degree, but last-minute changes and switches trying to fill these games back in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough job. For us, for any team, it's challenging. Our situation right now with having just so many players that are a combination of, have COVID, or showing, some symptoms. And so have some symptoms or pending a test or dealing with an injury that's limiting them in some way. We're probably at like 10. We're at like 10 players. I think 9 either, 9, I think, right now either have COVID or showing symptoms, and then you have Adama who, is limited because of really the timeline of, his particular, injury situation. So it's, it's not ideal, but you like to think that, potentially, with that, that January 8th game moving forward, we hope to be looking at, this will be our only disruption and we'll be able to play it out.
Dave Borges?
Sorry, I was tweeting. Is it your understanding that, like last year, if a guy tests positive, he does not get tested again for, what is it, like 90 days or something? Is that still the case? And I guess sort of similar along those lines, is there a time where you can see the team getting back to practicing right now, or is that kind of impossible to know pending like further tests and things like that?
Yeah. So the first question, I don't know. I don't even want to answer that first one because, but if you do have it, you should get a runway if you've had it of hopefully a couple months where you don't have to be tested. But I mean that right now, the tough part for us is the last time that the team has practiced was the 21st, or it was really the Marquette game. We had the mandatory NCAA 3 days off, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th for Christmas. On the 25th, multiple members of the program, myself included, started testing positive. So we obviously couldn't practice the 25th or the 26th as people were symptomatic and testing positive across the board, staff members, players, just all different people involved with the program. So we really haven't had a practice since a team practice since shoot around on the 21st. These guys have been the people that are not symptomatic and have tested negative a couple of times are lifting in small groups and are working out, doing workouts with the coaches that don't have symptoms and have tested negative. So I think there's probably 5 or 6 players that are doing things with the coaches right now.
Treyas?
Hey Dan, thanks for getting on this. I guess a basketball-related question for another story I'm writing. Can you talk about your rebounding? You guys are, I think, 4th in Division I total rebounding, and you guys have had a very impressive team rebounding effort. Can you talk about if that's something you guys focus on in practice, specific drills, etc.?
Yeah, man. I think the rebounding piece, comes, part of, your style of play, your identity, the types of players that you recruit, the type of effort that your team gives, how physical you are, the type of mentality that you develop. And, it's, we try to play, when we're fully, when we're fully healthy and, we've got our full complement of team on the floor, our wings, Andre and Tyrese, positionally rebound as good as anyone in the country on the wing. And then our front court players, do a heck of a job on the backboard as well. And obviously we're athletic and aggressive, and it lends itself to, to being a relentless team on the glass.
Pat, Eden Rob?
Yeah, Coach, can you let us know, has anybody had anything other than mild symptoms on your team? And at what point do the cancellations become a factor in terms of not wanting to reschedule because of health and safety concerns of having so many games close together?
Yeah, that's that last part. I can't speak to what the league is thinking. So I don't even want to comment on the conference and their part in this. Just with the players and the staff, it's been mild symptoms. I mean, everyone's been vaccinated. Most of the staff has been vaccinated, has had boosters. The players have been vaccinated. Just been mild symptoms for the guys. But some of them, some of the guys have not felt well.
Tom?
Hey, Dan.
And some of the players, some of the players have had no symptoms, and some of the players have, experienced like symptoms with it. Probably more have felt symptoms than not.
Yeah, Dan, I just want to ask, in your conversations, with the league or with David about the league, will you have an input or maybe a veto power in terms of rescheduling games if a game is rescheduled on a day that and you're not comfortable playing? Do you have an option there, or is it, hey, you play this day or you forfeit? Do you have an idea what their thinking is there?
I don't. Obviously, they were. They wanted a ton of information. Obviously, leading into these last two, postponements or cancellations or whatever the Xavier and Butler situations were. We tried in every way possible to make them aware that we were, down to, being, below the threshold of seven available players, whether we were at 5 or 6 guys that we could, bring out there who were fully healthy. And then we obviously left it in the hands of Stu and Val. It's certainly, these are certainly times where they've got to, they've got to make, the best decisions, both from a Big East standpoint, but also for a player wellness standpoint. This is where they've got to, they got to step up and do their job.
Charlotte?
Dan, thanks for doing this with us. You had mentioned just at the beginning just how with isolation and these tests, this is kind of weighing, your purpose has been weighing on you. I just wanted to kind of follow up what you meant by that and how you're handling this, going through all this again.
Yeah, it's all relatively speaking. But as when you last season, you don't. This season's been so much fun. Even playing in the Battle for Atlanta, 7 to home crowds, playing at West Virginia, Marquette, experiencing the road crowd, and you feel like kind of leaving the team when we land after winning at Marquette. See you guys in a couple days, and 18 Big East games, Big East tournament. Potentially the NCAA. See you guys in a couple days, and we're gonna. The best part of the season's ahead of us, and then you go on a pause. That's. There was a sense, I think, getting through the first 6 weeks of 13 games that we were kind of in the clear with this, and there's been a real humbling reminder.
Adam?
Hey, Dan, I'm sorry you're dealing with this, man. It stinks. I think the Big East has already had like 10 or 11 games postponed or canceled. I know you guys are on that group text. Have any of the coaches suggested like pausing the season for a month or trying to do a bubble or anything like that? Or what are your thoughts on any of that?
No, I think probably the biggest, right now, probably the biggest thing that I've kind of communicated, not with the league. I haven't had any communication with the conference at all about the current state of our team. I think that's obviously between the league and I think David Benedict. The only thing that we've talked about is just that 5-day or 10-day window, especially if you're without symptoms. When will that kick in? Is that obviously some sports leagues, the NFL and the NBA, with the CDC release of that 5-day window of getting out of quarantine with the mask. I'd say that is probably the thing that's being discussed the most. When are we going to adhere to those new guidelines? Obviously, it's got to go through the university, the state, local health. But when will that kick in, the move from the 10-day to the 5-day?
Okay, thanks.
You got it.
Alexa, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to follow up on that, Dan. Is your sense that that's more of a matter of when, not if, that it'll change to 5 days?
I thought that there was some, Alexa, I think immediately when it dropped, I think that there was, when that hit social media and a couple of people texted it to me, there was a sense of like, oh wow, this is great. We're on a 5-day window now instead of the 10. But I think that is probably not realistic. It's going to obviously sounds like it's going to take a little bit more time because again, it's got to go through the state and it's got to go through the university, and there's so many layers there. It's not like the Big East can say, "Hey, we're adopting this CDC guideline and we're going with this immediately." So I think there was some initial hope that we could even play before January 8th if that were to be adopted, but it doesn't sound like that's coming soon.
Thank you.
You got it.
Gavin, back.
Dan, what have you done to try to stay involved basketball wise, or have you just not fell up to it, or you talking to your coaches regularly? What kind of things are you doing?
Yeah, just talking to the staff and trying to stay engaged with with the coaches, and obviously get a chance to watch all of our games. Start obviously the prep for the Seton Hall game for me. Starting to watch Seton Hall and do a self-study on our season so far, and try to keep the spirits of the players up. It's for them it's a little bit like here we go again with with the season, but just obviously trying to get across to the team that these games got a great chance of being made up, and that we've got a good chance to be able to play the rest of our season without disruption. That doesn't mean that we'll not be without players. We're likely to be without players January 8th. We're likely to be without players for the St. John's game as well. Just because it's a staggered, the timing of people getting symptoms and the positive test was kind of staggered with us. So, you're going to see, I think, kind of players coming back in a staggered fashion.
So everybody's under the 10-day. Everybody's under the 10-day rule that as soon as they get tested positive, they have to be out for 10 days.
Yes, I think we get some after the new year. There's a chance that I think after New Year's, January 1 or January 2, players will come out of the quarantine, but then there's like a return to play where it's up, they don't immediately head to practice with their sneakers and start going live. They've got to, these guys haven't done anything with a basketball since the Marquette game. So some of these guys will be on 10, 11 days where they haven't touched the basketball or been around the team. So for some players, it's going to even be more than that. The guys that either tested positive a day or two later or the symptoms were a couple days later.
Thank you. Hope you feel better.
No, I feel good. Thanks, Gavin.
Eric Dobres.
Coach, you mentioned about watching games, prepping for Seton Hall, self-study, stuff like that. But do you have enough to fill the day? I mean, are you watching Netflix? I mean, how is your day? You know what I mean? There's only so many games and stuff you can watch, right? All kidding aside.
Yeah. I mean, everyone, I gave it, my wife, Andrea, I'd imagine I gave her the COVID because she tested, she's got it and, isn't feeling great. So I'm doing best I can to, take care of her. I don't know if I'm doing a great job with that. I gave, both my sons, as well. I gave it to them for Christmas. So, it's, you watch film, you do as many things as you can to keep yourself busy. A couple of days that I had some symptoms, I kind of rested and slept a lot. But now that I'm feeling better within the last day, I'm chomping at the bit to get back to work. Thinking about getting on the Peloton bike at some point. So there's some things that are giving me a little bit of hope.
Dave?
Thanks.
Yeah, Dan, just two quick things, one of which I think you kind of already answered. The idea of potentially making up the Xavier game next week, like Tuesday or Wednesday, that seems pretty unlikely at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, unless unless the expectation is, a player is going to get out of quarantine on Tuesday and go play Tuesday night. If you obviously those things are not reasonable, and it's not fair to these kids or players and potential for injury. I think probably realistic for us to look at the January 8th date and say we're are we going to be able to field the full team for that one? No chance, but we'll certainly be above. If we have no more setbacks, we should certainly be above the 7 healthy players. Because the one silver lining is, what's Adama. By the time that next week rolls around, he could be looking at being fully cleared without restrictions at some point next week, which will certainly push our number up.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. So this is he's progressing as well as he can at this point.
Yeah, I mean he's nowhere near. I think what against Auburn, he was 37 minutes and 30 points. The problem for Adama is it's such a challenging injury. That abdominal tear and just not having the time to build up any strength or any cardio. He gets the one practice leading into Marquette. He's on the 12 to 15 minute restriction. You have he plays that game. You have the mandatory 3 days off. And then all hell breaks loose on Christmas Day with the COVID. So he actually hasn't been able to even get in a real practice since the Marquette game. So we're going to have to find a way to try to build up some strength and some cardio so that he could be a full go guy for us. Hopefully at some point next week or into the following weekend. But that's been the hard part for him is we haven't been able to kind of get him going because of, the chaos that's kind of broken out with all the positives tests.
Wayne, Norman?
Hi, Dan. Hope you're back in the saddle soon. What kind of treatment does the UConn medical staff or your own medical people give you and the players on this? Is it just rest and isolate, or do they give you some kind of medication, drugs, dietary changes, things like that?
Yeah, so I think there's like wellness package, which it would be. I'd imagine your ibuprofen, but more so the things that really help people, the vitamin C and vitamin D supplements, recommendations, get a lot of rest and those types of things. The healthy lifestyle choices that strengthen your immune system so that you can, fight off viruses.
Dom, back to you.
There's a non-COVID question, but do you anticipate anybody enrolling and joining your program in the second semester? Is that something that's on the table, or what? Is there any update with that possibility?
Well, Phil?
I don't think we should answer that. No. That's no comment at this time.
Dom, I have no comment at this particular time. But anyone that would come in wouldn't be able to come in and play and give us like 7 guys.
That's fair enough.
So they couldn't come in and play anyway. But
go ahead, Charlotte.
Dan, I was just going to ask how the guys are handling all of this. I mean, you talked about how kind of you're dealing with it, but just them, besides those who are healthy, being able to get in some individual stuff, but just having to come back and go through this.
Yeah, it's I think it's just pretty surprising for them, and pretty surprising and pretty shocking. Just because you play those first 13 games and you're heading home for Christmas, and obviously we've dealt with injuries the whole year. Not having Isaiah for the Michigan State game, and losing Tyrese and Adama for the West Virginia game, and not having Adama for the Providence game, and Tyrese's first game back with the cast for the Providence. So you're dealing with the injuries, which is kind of what you expect, especially the last 2 years with us. It seems to be pretty common. But you feel like you got the vaccine. You almost feel like it's not going to disrupt you. And for it to hit when we were kind of not around each other too while we were away, it's a little bit of a jolt for the guys. But again, if we can't promise we're going to have players that won't miss their time with COVID, but the one thing that I think is keeping them going is hey, once we get back to that next game, and enough of us have had it where we should have hopefully a runway to be able to play out the rest of the season without having to worry about it. That doesn't mean that the guys that haven't had it won't get it and miss some time, but this should be our last pause, hopefully. Or I'm telling them that this is our last pause and that we're going to be able to play it out the rest of the way. And I think that's what's keeping everybody going.
Pat?
Yeah, and I think the positivity rate today was over 20% in Connecticut with the contagion this virulent with the Omicron strain. How worried are you about fans in the stands and these games becoming super spreader events? And do you think that they should consider not having fans at these games?
Yeah, that's not a question for for a basketball coach. At least those last two parts. The first part, you have a lot of concern just for people in general, people in Connecticut, and people all around the world. Just you don't want folks to get real sick and to be in harm's way and to suffer and struggle. So your heart breaks for anyone that's that has to deal with this, either where it hurts them physically or causes them a lot of suffering physically, or has an impact on their lives on any level. So you just your heart breaks for anyone for all of us that are dealing with this thing right now, and obviously you want everyone back to normalcy, but obviously we're not quite there yet.
And is there any idea if there was one event that got the team sick, or did everyone get it separately over the break, or any idea how this infection took your team?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it had to be. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. For me, on the 23rd, I started to feel it. When I really think about it, somewhere on probably the 23rd into Christmas Eve, you start to have that feeling, a little bit of fatigue and a runny nose, and your head starts to hurt, and you start having some joint pains and stuff. So for me, I started feeling it on the 23rd, and I think that there are a couple of players that have a similar timeline. There's a couple of other players that maybe a couple days later. obviously I give that, I spread that to my wife and, my oldest son, and, their symptoms are a couple days later than mine because I obviously, gave it to them during the holidays.